Hello, you guys. Again, greetings from Colorado. So we are doing notes via YouTube again. Feel free to pause as needed, as you need to kind of go faster or slower depending on your pace. So trapezoids and kites are what we're talking about today. And we'll talk first about trapezoids, and then the backside we'll talk about kites. And you should be able to fill this in the notes that the sub will give to you. So a trapezoid has one set of parallel sides, but only one set. And those are called bases. So they're parallel. The other two sides are called legs. And those are obviously not parallel. And so that's just a trapezoid, and we use those a lot in geometry. I'm sure you've heard of it before. But then we can also have an isosceles trapezoid. Now an isosceles trapezoid, just like an isosceles triangle, it has two equal sides. The bases in this case are congruent. The legs are congruent. I said the bases. It's the legs are congruent. The legs are congruent, so if I have a leg on each side, those are going to be equal in an isosceles trapezoid. They still have the one set of parallel sides though, so that still comes down, so the bases are still parallel. Now in an isosceles trapezoid, just like in an isosceles triangle, there's two congruent angles. So the base angles are going to be congruent. But there's more than one set of base angles. There's base angles on the top, so those are congruent to each other. And then on the bottom, those are congruent to one another. But notice that these two are not congruent. Then, once we know that, we can find out that, we mentioned, I guess I'm going to write down the one set of parallel sides. We already knew that one though. Now, it is important to note that the diagonals are congruent in an isosceles trapezoid. The diagonals are congruent. So like if I have A, B, C, D, AC will equal BD. But then also in an isosceles trapezoid, the same side interior angles are supplementary, which means they add to 180. But that's also the case up here, so I should have wrote that up here as well. So the same side interior angles are supplementary. So like angle A plus angle D would equal 180. And then also angle B plus angle C would equal 180. I realize I should have wrote that up here. That's also the case up here. So this same rule applies up here as well. All right, so in this next problem, they want us to show that this shape is a trapezoid. Now, it doesn't necessarily say an isosceles trapezoid, so all we need to show is that we have one set of parallel sides. Hopefully you look at this and you can kind of tell what you think is going to be parallel. I think that YZ is going to be parallel to XW. So I'm going to check that. So I'm going to check the slopes of each of these. Now, so I want to have parallel lines. So parallel lines have the same slope. So I'm going to check and see, is this parallel to that? I can't just say it looks parallel. So I can either use the slope formula, or I can just do rise over run, since it's already on the graph. So I'm going to go from y to z. So I'm going to go down and then over. So I go down 3 and then over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So a -1/2 is my slope of yz. And I can do the same thing with x and w. So this is yz. And then I can go down 4 and over 8, which is also a -1/2, which is xw. So since I have the one set of parallel sides, it is a trapezoid. So this is enough to show that. So since I showed those sides are parallel, that's enough that we need. So we're moving on to this next one. Again, feel free to pause as needed. They want us to find the measures of J, L, and M. Now this is an isosceles trapezoid. So, but hopefully you guys notice that the bases this time are kind of, like, they're not drawn the same. So this is the base, because that's a parallel, and this is the base. So if it helps to draw change the picture, that might be helpful. Remember that the base angles are congruent. So this is congruent to that. So J would also have to be 100, because the base angles are congruent. Now the other two are not 100, they're the opposite base angles. But I know that the two angles together should add to 180. So I can do 180 minus 100 gives me 80 degrees, and that's going to be L and K. Those two are going to be congruent to one another. Oh, they already give you M. I'm guessing I wanted you to find K here. So those are both 80. All right, I'm going to flip the page. Last rule here, we're going to talk about the mid-segment of a trapezoid. And we've talked about mid-segments before of a triangle. Now we're going to talk about them for a trapezoid. So if I have two sides here, I'm going to call this like X and Y. I can draw a mid-segment. So if you remember, the mid-segment is it bisects each of the other sides. It's also called a median in some books or in some other places. So if you're looking like online, it might be called a median. So remember that it connects the midpoints of the legs, so it bisects each of the sides. And again, we have a trapezoid, so here's my parallel sides. And so that mid-segment is always going to be like the average of the other two legs, or the other two lines. So the MN, our mid-segment, is going to equal 1/2 of X and Y together. So you're like, take the average of the two. So for instance, if I wanted some numbers here, if this was 10 and this was 16, I would add the two and divide it in half. So this one would then be 13. So you take the average of them. And like I said, we talked about mid-segment of triangles before, so this is just mid-segment of trapezoids. Now this next problem, they don't give you both bases, they give you the mid-segment and one of the bases. So the MN is the part we know here. So I'm going to put in what I know. So I know 30. And I know Y. So I'm going to put that in as well. I called this one X because that's what they called X. I need to get rid of this 1/2. So I'm going to multiply by 2. and then I can solve for x. It ends up being 41.8, I believe. There's our x value. All right, the last last figure we're gonna talk about are kites. And these you might have called diamonds before when you were like a kid when you were first learning these. Hopefully they start calling them kites now, but kites are a little bit different, so just a different shape, but they show up a lot in different places, so it's not like it's a shape you've never seen before. So what this one is it's two pairs of equal sides, but they're going to be right next to each other. So we're going to say two pairs of consecutive congruent sides. So consecutive means next to. So we have two pairs of consecutive congruent sides. So this is congruent to that, that's congruent to that. So this is not a rhombus. They're not all equal. If they were all equal, then it'd be a rhombus. Now, one of the things about a kite, think about a kite you flew when you were a kid. There's always these sticks we put down the middle. Those are diagonals. And if you're flying a kite, you want your diagonals to be perpendicular. And again, if you need to write perpendicular out, you guys can. Just remember that that's what that stands for. But also in a kite, there's one set of congruent angles. I'm going to use a different color. So the angles that are between the two non-congruent sides are always going to be congruent. So one set of congruent angles. And that set of angles is always going to be between the two sides that aren't equal. So think about where you put the cross stick in your kite. All right, so last one here, we're going to do an example with kites. So they have a kite drawn here for us. We can clearly see we have two sides marked equal and then these two sides. They tell me BAD, this big angle, I guess it's not big, this whole angle is 38. It should be degrees. So this is 38. And it says BCD is 50. Clearly not the same as each other. They want us to find ADC. So they want us to find this one here. But hopefully you know we have opposite angles that are congruent. So that means this one is also the same value. So I'm going to call each of those x. And I know that since this is a four-sided figure, I know that the sum of the angles add to 360 because it's a four-sided figure. So I can do 38 plus x. And again, I know these x's are the same because of this rule up here. Plus 50 plus x will equal 360. So I get 360 equals 2x plus 88. So I get 272 equals 2x. So I find out that x is 136 for each of those angles. So ADC is 136. They both would be. Now the next one I'm going to kind of redraw this shape because I have it all marked up. So I'm going to draw it again over here. I don't have my technology. I can't just copy and paste it. So you guys can not be mad at me this time. So I'm going to draw this again. Bear with me on my drawing here. So B, and they tell me BT is 5 and TC is 8. This is 5, this is 8. Find CD. So we're looking for, I guess I'll call it Y because I already used X. All right, so first of all, remember that our diagonals are perpendicular. So I have a little right triangle here. But I also know that my edges are congruent, these two. So this is also Y. So what I have here, I can draw, is I have a little right triangle. I'm going to bring this up here. So I have 5, I have 8, and then I have Y. And so this just becomes Pythagorean theorem because I know it's a right triangle because we drew it within our kite. So I do 5 squared plus 8 squared equals Y squared. So 25 and 64. 89 equals our Y squared. And so Y ends up being about 9.43. So again, just taking that little right triangle out of there. So guys, again, feel free to go back and look over anything. Also realize your book is a great source of resources as well as Khan Academy. So if you're looking for more help with this, your homework that's listed here, these are both review sections. So they're like little quiz reviews just to have you guys kind of keep cycling back to things that you guys have learned before. And then this is the new topic. So bring these on Wednesday. But don't forget, we also still have that assignment from the other day that we did. And that was the one that you guys, I think, might have called long. That was like 3 through 51. So that one we're going to check as well on Wednesday. So don't forget about that one. So that was, let's see, I'm just trying to look it up here. So that was also page 537. And that was 3 through 51 odds. So if you haven't yet finished this one, please do. I don't want you guys to forget about that. That's also due Wednesday. We got that last week Wednesday. So you had a full week to do it. So hopefully that worked out. Please feel free to email me with questions. I don't know how quickly I'll get back. I am, again, on vacation, but I'm accessible by email from here and there. So feel free to send me a message if needed. Otherwise, just bring questions when I'm back on Wednesday. Hope you guys are doing well. Take care.